Hey everyone, it's Andrew Brown. In this video, we're going to be focusing on OPA, or if we pronounce it all the letters, OPEA, which is the Open Platform for Enterprise. I want us to start working with this in the smallest amount of units. If you did my GenAI Essentials course, you know that we actually deploy an entire microservice, but we want to make it so that you can build whatever you want, and so we have to start with the foundational blocks of the framework. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the GitHub for OPA. So I'm typing OPEA GitHub. And so OPEA, or OPA, as they like it to be pronounced, is a collection of open source projects. And the one that is built by a bunch of components is the GenAI comps. So if we go into here, we have comps, and then in here we have more comps. And so these are all the working components that we can utilize. And so what I want to do is I want to pick out a few and get them running. And as your homework, I want you to either replicate what I have or get ones that I didn't use to get working. In order for us to utilize this stuff, we're going to have to utilize containers. If you don't have Docker set up or you don't have the resources on your local computer, you can use Gitpod, you can use GitHub code spaces. Those both allow you to run containers. If you need GPUs, then maybe Lightning AI, you might be able to get containers running on there. But last time I checked, it wasn't easy to do that. Another possibility is you can just launch up a virtual machine on AWS, GCP, or Azure. So if you have cloud credits, or you can work in the free tier, maybe there's things that you can do there. But I'm going to be using my local compute here today. I do have the Intel AI PC that I could utilize here, and I can also just run it on my current machine. If I have it on my current machine, I think I'm just going to utilize that here very quickly. But if I feel that I need compute or I want to use CPU compute, then I'm going to bring in the AI PC. So we do have a lot of components here, and maybe what we can do is go over to the OPA website, which is opa.dev. I'm going to tell you that there's a lot of documentation and it's a mess, but at least it's all there, right? So I think maybe at some point they're going to clean this up and make it a little bit easier. But if you know what the containers look like on the inside, it's not too bad. So here we have our comps, which are microservices, and you can see that we have a variety of them. And so probably the one that we're most interested in running on day one would be the one that runs the model. So we have LLMs and LVMs. I always forget the difference between these two, so let's open them up. And okay, document summary of this service. And again, you can see there's some inconsistencies with the documentation, but again, that's totally fine. So LLM is the microservice that leverages LangChain to implement summarization strategies and facilitate LLM interface using text generation interface. So remember, before I was saying that LangChain, this isn't the GenAI Essentials, but LangChain and Ollama Index do not scale because they are single instances. But these parts don't really need to scale beyond a single container, as they are just facilitating things. Where you want to see scaling in your container workload is the actual model itself, which would be served by TGI. I don't think there is a model specifically for TGI. Let's take a look here and see if there is. So I'm just looking for, I'll type in TGI. Okay, so we do actually have one down here, TGI LLM microservice. We'll take a look here. Text generation interface is a toolkit for deploying and serving large language models. So we're setting up the environment, we're utilizing it. And so what I'm looking for, is it doing anything special? So if we go back over to here, I know this is a bit of a mess, but I'm trying to match up this information, right? So what I'm looking for is, do we have TGI? It has third parties over here. And then in here, we have TGI. Ah, there it is. And so VLM is another way that we can serve models. Again, this is covering the GenAI Essentials. If this stuff is complicated, go reference those sections in that course. But if we go to TGI, this is the thing that's going to actually run the model. Okay, so this is a toolkit for developing and serving large language models. TGI enables high-performance text generation for most popular open LLMs, including Llama, Falcon, StarCoder, Bloom, GPT, NeoX, and more. So we have information here. But you know what? I think before we really get started on here, I should write up a document of what we're trying to accomplish here. So I'm going to go over to, sometimes I'm all over the place. I apologize, folks. But I'm going to go to our main document. Okay, and we're going to go find it. Easy way is go to full curriculum here. And on the left-hand side, we are into week 2. And I'm going to go ahead and make a new project here. So I'm going to add a new subtab, and this one is going to be 200. We'll call this OPA comps. Right? And so I'm just going to go ahead and grab this. There's no magic that's happening over here. It's just me working through this stuff. So OPA comps. This will be level 200 because we are in the second week, and second week shouldn't be super, super hard. And so we're going to need ourselves a business goal. So the business goal is the company wants you to utilize. The company wants you to build a or wants you to explore the effort it would take to run the AI workloads completely on servers that will live in-house. Okay, the fractional CTO, I used to be a fractional CTO for a while, but that's someone that works like, they're like a CTO for hire for multiple companies. But the fractional CTO suggests that it's best practice to run workloads in containers or Kubernetes. You as the AI engineer have been tasked to determine how to learn to work with the major building block or the building blocks to construct your own Gen AI. We'll say Gen AI workloads running on containers. Okay, and so we are going to stick with OPA. There's really not many other options out there, but like in terms of technical restrictions, we're going to use OPA comps project. And so I'm going to go ahead and link this here, which is this is all the services. So grab this one here. And then we'll get the repo as well, which is over here. Gen AI comps. This is going to be the GitHub repo. Okay. So we'll go ahead and paste that in here. And so now we can reference both those things. So that's going to be our technical restrictions. And for now, we're just going to stick with Docker containers, because Kubernetes can be really hard. I have made an entire Kubernetes course, and you'd think I would be really good at it, but I'm not. I really rely on our friends like our other guest instructors, James and Julia. So we are going to do Kubernetes later on, but for now, we're going to keep it simple with Docker containers. And it's just less moving parts will make things a lot easier. So we have our business goal, we have our technical restrictions. What are some technical uncertainties that we have, right? So the question is like, using OPA, which, does it serve the model via a LLM server, right? And I believe that it does. And then the question is like, how do we connect two services, or how do we orchestrate two services together? So that might be something we want to figure out. And, what does the consistency, because like if you're testing this for real, you want to use those building blocks, you want to understand like, are those building blocks good overall? And so you'd have to kind of explore a few of them. So what is the quality of build across the various OPA, various OPA comps? Is it going to be a good solution, or can we only use a few of these, right? I'm going to make this really clear because some folks are never sure about homework, but like homework challenges would be chain or orchestrate multiple services, e.g. 2 or 3 together, or try and get multiple, try to get a different comp working that Andrew did not use. I'm going to give you homework bonuses. This is something, because I really do like OPA, and I would just say that the documentation here is not strong. And this is a great opportunity for us to make it more clear for others. And so I would say for this one, make a tutorial or technical doc that is public. So on LinkedIn, Medium, what else could it be? Your own blog, like Hashnode, your own blog, a GitHub. I don't know GitHub. I'd rather people like practice trying to make and explain how it works. And this is something that I would really like to see. And you know, tag Andrew or show off the work in the Discord show and tell. Which, by the way, I'm going to go make that right now. I said I would, when I was in the last office hours, I thought I would make a show and tell Discord channel so that when you're working on stuff, you can show off. I'll be back in just a moment. There we go. I just added it to the channel. I'm calling it Hack and Tell. And so, you know, if there's something here, we might have one in here so that you can tell us what we utilize. And for this one, I'm going to call it, this will be OPA comps, and this will be week 1. So, you know, tell us what share your tutorial on how you got a different kind of comp working or comps you chain together. And again, you know, just do what you can. A lot of folks get stressed out because they think they have to do everything that I see, but I'm looking for creativity and for those to stretch their bounds. So if you want to do exactly what I do, you can do that. If you want to do something more creative, absolutely do that. As long as it's within the scope of this thing, and you're not, again, shipping me some kind of random thing. I won't take something super random. But yeah, so we have this kind of detailed out. So now that we have that, let's make our way back over to here. And so we were looking at the TGI, right? So the thing I'm wondering is, like, TGI actually already has a container. It can run on its own, but it appears to have its own here that's integrated. And it might be that we use this one, or we use the generic one that is not in here, because this one might be set up for a very specific use case. So what I want to do is go back over to here into the code. And so we have TGI, right? And here it's saying on Xeon, or it's saying on Gaudi. So I'm thinking that this one in particular is specifically configured maybe for Xeon processors. So let's go take a look here. There might be nothing special in particular for it to be optimized for that, but let's take a look. So we have a health check. We have TGI Gaudi server here. And so that's fine. What I want to do, and we have TGI server up here. So we have the normal variant here, which is a CPU. And then we have the one here. So what I want is I want to be able to run this on my current machine. And it really comes down to what is available here. Like if this one doesn't work, we could always do Ollama. So see how Ollama's here? So you got to make it work for what it is. So maybe, you know, TGI makes more sense if we are going to run these on real servers with Xeon processors, or if we're going to run this on Gaudi, which is very expensive. We can actually run it in Intel AI Cloud. I think they have notebooks in there. But maybe what would make more sense is actually to run Ollama, because we all have, like, we all can install Ollama. I have it installed right now, and that might be an easier way. So Ollama allows you to run open source language models for Llama 3. It can do more than just that, but it bundles model weights, configuration, things like that. So maybe this is the one that we might want to run. Download and install Ollama onto the available supported platforms, including Windows. Modify the Ollama service configuration. Okay, add your proxy server to here, restart, and stuff like that. I don't know if we have to do all of those things, but it's just a matter of making sure that it runs. But notice over here we have deployment, and we go to compose. And here it says Ollama, so we have an image. Oh, okay, so this is literally running Ollama as a container. So, you know, I just want to show you there's no real magic that's going on here. It's just the fact that they've figured out the configuration for you. And this one's set up into bridge mode. If you're not good with Linux networking, neither am I. I did cover it in my my Kubernetes course, some of these things which by the way is free, so you can look up bridge networking there. But as I remember, bridge networking allows you to bridge a connection to other ones, so that's going to be a good way we can work here. But this seems to be a good start for that. So maybe what we'll do is get Ollama working first, and TGI is a little bit too complicated. So that's what I'm going to focus on. Now I need to run this somewhere, and I'm going to open up my VS Code. And so I have the free GenAI Bootcamp here. This says Lang portal, which I don't have yet. So I'm thinking, I'm not sure what all these components are doing here, but I'm thinking that this is the Exam Pro Co one, and I want the Omen King one. Oops, I'm not sure. I can't seem to CD back here today. And it's going to get a bit confusing, so I'm going to make a new folder called Omen King just so I can distinguish between these two. And I'm going to clone that one down from here. So I'm going to go over, and by the way, I'm just using VS Code. I'm not using Windsurf right now. I'm trying to keep it simple for now. But if you want, you can use Copilot or whatever to help you along here. But I'm going to go type in GitHub, or sorry, 2025, free GenAI Bootcamp. I can clone mine down. You're not supposed to clone mine. You're supposed to clone your own, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and clone this. I'm going to type in code period. You might have to have that installed for VS Code to work. If you don't know how to work with VS Code, we cover it in the GitHub or the Essentials course, GenAI Essentials course. Okay, so we'll expand this open, and so I'm going to make a new folder here, and this is going to be called OPEA comps. Right? I want you to match this the name of this folder exactly as I do here. So make sure you do match it. And we are going to go ahead and start to get set up. So how can we start working? I have a few too many tabs open. Let me close a few, okay? I closed so much I lost my folder, but that's totally fine. So I'm going to drag this on down here. And we have GenAI comps, right? And so in here, we're going to go into comps again. And we know that if we want to run the actual models, they're in third party here. And we have Ollama. And so we scroll on down. And so we have some options here. So modify the Ollama service config file. Okay, I see that. But like if we look here, this is just a deployment file, right? There's nothing. Download and install Ollama. So I guess what they're suggesting is that you can either run it as a container, or they're just talking about running it in general, right? I would rather run it as this. And so what I'm thinking, like there's no rules on how we can run this, but I'm just literally going to grab the deployment file here. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab this. And this is going to be the service for running Ollama. So I'm going to go ahead here and just say workload.yaml. Or sorry, we'll call this docker compose.yaml. I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. By the way, there are plugins, so I'm going to install the Docker extension. This will make my life way easier. I really hope I already have Docker installed. I don't have to install it twice. But so now we have it here. And we also have a Docker tab here. It says fail to connect to Docker. Is it installed? The question is, are we in WSL right now? So that's another thing that we want to take a look here. So notice here, yeah, we are. I'm going to type in Docker. Do we see Docker? And so Docker is not installed right now. So if you don't have Docker, I have instructions. These are one way you do it, but don't do it this way. If you're going to install Docker, I guess I have to install it. We're going to go over to the Docker Ubuntu website. If you're on Windows, use WSL. Do not use the Windows side of it. We're not going to support you if you try to do everything on the Windows side. It's just too hard. It doesn't work well. But if you're on Mac, the process will be look up Mac. So they probably have Mac. If it's not Mac, then it's normally Debian because, or not Debian, but I don't know. But you can install it. There's lots of ways to install it. But I'm going to go ahead here and get going. So before you install Docker Engine, you need to install configuring packs. This is already covered again in our GenAI Essentials, but I'm going to go ahead and do it again here because I have to. So I'm just going to run these line by line. You're going to put my password in here. Run the next one. We'll run the next one. We will run the next one. We'll run the next one. I don't remember there being this many lines, but it says they're here. And then we'll run the next line. See, they're really tricky here. And then we'll run the next one. And now that I'm a bit more aware of my head, I'm going to move it there in the bottom corner. So now that should make it so that we can pull from the app repo. And so this one's going to install. So we're installing Docker C, the Community Edition, Community CLI, Container IO, Container DIO, which is the underlying container engine that we're running, which is an OCI compliant container engine. When we talk to James, he'll tell us all about that stuff. I'm really bad at telling that stuff. So it's going to install. I don't like it when it has to have sudo, so we're going to find a way to turn off sudo. Again, this is all my GenAI Essentials course. I'm just kind of doing it from scratch here because it's not that hard for me to do. So I'm going to grab sudo and run this here. And so it says, unable to find it's downloading, but I want to run it without sudo. I promise you, this will make your life so much easier. So we're going to say Docker without sudo. I'm going to go here, maybe here. And I'll know it when I see it. It's kind of like that group stuff here. Yeah, it's kind of like this. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna go to the GenAI Essentials, grab it from there. They're not looking like I want them to look. And so we go into local development here, local dev, in maybe not there. OPEA, nope. Just give me a moment to find it here. Oh, you know what I think? I think when I did this here, I actually referenced another one and I didn't copy the code over. I mean, it might be here somewhere, but we definitely install it, but I think what I did is I referenced another project. This is my problem, having too many projects. So we'll go over to here. This is actually one that I did with AWS, which was, let's say, GenAI. We got lots of GenAI stuff here. Workshop here. Yeah, it was in this one. And it was in Docs, I believe. Maybe it was this one here, Hugging Face setup. It's somewhere here. Oh, intermediate workshop. Yeah, it's over here. And yeah, it's these three lines here. So we have sudo group add docker. So yeah, if you did the OPA video in the other one, we basically follow this. And if there is an OPA one, maybe that's where it is in the GenAI Essentials. That's probably where it is. But we need these three lines: sudo group add docker, this one here, and this one. This one here probably will error out the first one. It doesn't really matter, but I'm going to run it anyway. This is pretty much instructions I was finding online. It just didn't have that last line, which is this new group Docker. If we don't do that, that's not going to do what we want. So now what I want to do is hit up. And what I'm trying to do is I want to run the hello world again. So instead of doing sudo docker, sudo run hello world, I just want to do this. And so I think it ran, yeah, hello from Docker. So that successfully ran. Again, I'm gonna make my head way, way smaller, get all the way out of here. And so that's gonna be a way that we can now work with these containers. So it is installed. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit connect, see if that helps it. Refresh. And it seems like it's a bit confused. So what I'm gonna do is close this out and reopen it. Just give me a moment. I'm gonna close it out so I'm not showing my whole screen. 1 second. All right, so I've reopened it. Saying this workspace is on the Windows mount system for best performance, recommend moving to home. I don't care. And so we'll go back over to here. And so now we can see the previous ran container. Sometimes restarting it really fixes the problem. So, you know, this is not what we're running here, but this is hello world, right? And so when we have this thing installed, you can basically, oh, that closed out. Give me 1 moment. I don't know why it crashed. There we go. But anyway, I was trying to say that sometimes there's like contextual menus and things like that that will show us stuff. So what I was hoping was is if here we have compose up, compose down, select services. And so we only have an individual service that's running in here, which is the Ollama server. And it looks like it has port 808 or 11434. So I'm not sure which way it's mapping, but the point is that it's taking a port and mapping a particular way. We have no proxy, HTTP proxy. So these are some options that we can set. We want to use no proxy, as there is no proxy that's happening here. And then there's the host IP. But I'm not sure where it's going to get these values. And I almost feel like I have to pass them in. So let's go take a look at the docs. Bring this up here. And let's see if we have any examples here. We'll go back to the README. So we have here sudo vim Ollama service, add your proxy to the information. We're not running a proxy here, usage. And so they have this. So that's not that useful. Let's go take a look at the OPA.dev website, because I feel like we have to set those environment variables. Otherwise, how's it going to work? So I'm going to go over to, I'm going to go to OPA.dev. And we're going to go to microservices. And I'm looking for third parties. And in here, I'm looking for Ollama. So I don't directly see it here, but we might see it somewhere else here. Let's type it in, Ollama. And so we don't have that information. So that's something that is missing from the documentation. Again, it's not like it's going to be that hard to figure out. It's such a basic thing, but it's just, I wish they kind of gave us an example so we could copy and paste. So I'm going to make a new README here just so we have some instructions ourselves. And I'm going to go and say, running Ollama third-party service container. We'll call it service. So we know, based on this, that there is some stuff that we have to provide here. And so I'm expecting it to fail if we try to start this. So I'm going to right-click it and go to Compose Up. And so notice right away, it's saying that some things are not set. So the variable's not set, defaulting to blank string. So it's trying to set these things and they're not going anywhere. The host IP, I think we do have to set it to something, but we'll see what happens. Also, it's like the LM model ID variable is not set. So defaulting to blank string. So it's going to download it, but it's not going to be able to run it without these values set here. So maybe what we can do is just look up this container here. Right? And container. And see if we can find some of the instructions. Because they didn't create this container, so somewhere else they would have the information. So I'm not exactly sure, but what we'll do is we'll copy this here. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to use Claude. It doesn't matter what you use. I'm going to ask something to fix this, but we'll go here and say, what values am I supposed to pass and set when doing Docker Compose? I'll give it a moment here to figure it out. So here we have some information, and so it has LLM port 8808, Llama 2, which by the way is really old. That's not going to help us, but it's kind of setting us up with some values here. Let's just say, what should the host IP be? The IP address of your host, usually the local host IP address. Like, I feel like we could probably just set it to 000 or like 127.0.0.1. It might still work. It should be the IP address of your host machine. You can find it using Linux or whatever. And again, it's a little bit frustrating that documentation is incomplete, but that's what I mean, where they have the bones, but some of the docs are not in good shape here. So I'm going to go here, and so that one's fine. It's not Llama 2. We'll try Llama 3.2 1 billion. We'll just try to do that, unless it's already changed and there's a newer one. We'll literally go over to Hugging Face and go get the right code here. Actually, you know what? We'll go to Ollama and get it from there. So if we go to Ollama here, we could run DeepSeek. You can do that if you want. I'm going to stick with what I know. And we have Llama 3.2, because this is what's going to get passed in. But I want 3.21 billion. I want it to be really, really small for all of you out there so that this is very efficient. And so this has to be the value that we want to pass in here. So I'm going to go grab the library link here. This is the whole library. And I'm going to assume that, choosing a model. So you can get the model ID that Ollama will launch from the Ollama library. Okay, so that will be one thing here. And what's not on right now is my Vim keys. So I'm going to turn those on. Sometimes I turn them off because they conflict with other extensions. I know with GitHub Copilot, it was causing some issues, and so I turned it off last time. But I think GitHub Copilot is not on right now, which I don't care. But anyway, so you can get the model ID from here. So e.g., this will be this one here. And we're going to assume would be, I wanted this here. This is where I could use my networking friends like Tim or anybody, all my networking friends, because I'm really bad at it, but I'm not sure what the port has to be here. So we'll just assume that it has to be my IP address. So getting the host IP. I think they said this would be ifconfig, or it's ipconfig depending on where you are. But I'm going to go ahead and open a new tab, and I'm in Bash here. I'm going to go ahead and type in ifconfig. So it's saying we need to install this. So for Linux, I am on Windows, but we want to do it on the Linux side here. So I'm going to try and do what it's suggesting here. And so let's see if we can run this now. And we can. I feel like there's another way to do it, but so what I'm looking for is the IP address here. And I would think that it would be Ethernet 0. This is usually what, like, this is like the actual connection. So I'm carefully looking at this. And again, not the best at reading this, but maybe this is it. I don't know. For those that are looking at me being like, what the heck's going on there? Sorry, I don't know. I'm not that great at this part. We'll go ahead and paste this in here. And so now we have 8008. And so we can try this. Now we can't do that Docker compose up the way we did before because that's not going to work. It is running. But I'm going to stop this. I'm going to see if this is going to work in our favor. So I'm going to go back over to this tab. I think this was running Docker here, and we need to cd into the 2025 folder here. Whoops. FreeGenAI, OPEA, and we'll go ahead and copy this here and see if it picks those up when it runs this here. It's then saying Docker compose not found. Well, it should be because Docker is here. Yes, Docker is there. Good. Maybe we'll take out the hyphen compose. That might be messing it up. That's the old syntax with a hyphen, right? And that's fine. We're going to ignore that for the second. But let's see if it picked up what we wanted it to pick up. So I'm going to scroll up here. It says, couldn't find root ID Ollama, generating new private key. The key is found. It's looking at the configuration. We're carefully looking at this here. And so it is doing stuff. It's running something. But how do we know that it's working? So again, just carefully looking at this here. TGI is way easier, by the way, but we'd have to go spin up an EC2 instance with a Xeon processor, and I don't want to do that, so we'll get this working this way. It's not complaining about other stuff. Like, we aren't going to do a proxy, so it's probably fine that it's left blank. One other thing that I'll check is that when I deployed this into the other one, when we did it for real in the other project, in the GenAI Essentials, I remember having to set this value. So what we can do is go over to my GenAI Essentials, of course. And we should have OPA somewhere in here. If we didn't, it's because we literally just lifted the other one. There it is, OPA basic. And in here, we set some values. So here I was mapping my existing host IP, which is something we could probably do, but it says no proxy is localhost. So I can just match those values, and maybe we can just kind of get away with that. So I'm going to say no proxy, and then localhost. And it'd be interesting to grab the host name, that like the IP address that way, but the host name doesn't always contain the IP address, so that might not necessarily work. So I'm gonna stop this, even though we ran it, and I'm gonna try again. This is in the GenAI Essentials. I'm gonna try this command and see what we get. This might not work for you, But remember, like here, like it didn't work and we just default to something and still work. Okay, so that works. It actually gives me a thing. So maybe that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab this thing and call it host IP like this. Get your IP address, right? Or you can try this this way, right? This way might work. And up here, like this is 172.24. So, okay, so I did grab the right value, but we can also do it that way. So it looks like I was right. And I do know a little bit of networking. Hooray. But, you know, maybe this will make our lives a little bit easier. I would like to do forward slash or backslashes to make this command a bit more manageable. But for now, I'm going to leave it alone. We're going to run this again. And so in theory, we should have everything we need to run this. We don't need to open this in the browser. I don't think this would give us an interface. Well, you know what? It does say it's running. So that's a good indicator. The question is like, is the model ready? And we don't know. So normally when you run models, you can check the container and see if it's doing something. So if we do Docker, actually I might be able to do it from here. But if we go Docker here and I right click and view the logs, it might tell us that it's doing something. So we go all the way down the ground. What I'm looking for to see is if it's polling the model. But if I've already have Ollama installed and I've downloaded the model, then like even if this is running Ollama in isolate, if I have on my machine stored the model, it's not going to have to download it twice, which I don't know. So anyway, the point is that we have it running. Now the thing that we need to do is interface with it. So how can we interface with this programmatically? There's actually an SDK or API that I have used in the Gen AI Essentials. But let's go back over to these docs here, over here. And here they have this example of curl, no proxy, whatever, whatever. And so here they're actually saying they're hitting the API endpoint, API generate. Okay. So if we didn't provide any values, then maybe it would actually just expect us to do this and then it would actually download the model. Okay, that kind of makes sense. But we here are specifying a very exact model. So I guess Ollama has an API. And we did see it as it spun up that there was an API. Okay, and so here's the API, right? So we'll go back over to here and we'll take a look and just say Ollama API. Once the Ollama server is running, we can make API calls to the Ollama API, right? Which is over here. And so the thing is that we just want to run a model. There's create a model, show a model, delete a model, download a model, pull a model. I'm hoping that it's going to just pull the model, run it. But it says generate a completion. And this is kind of what we want to do. And so here they have an example. That's exactly the one that we are using. So go ahead and grab that. I don't know if here we have to, you know, we'll say generate a request. But I don't know if we have to specify 1 billion here. I'm just going to put it in here because I don't want it to end up downloading the larger one, and that would be unfortunate. We do see port 11434. The question is, what is the open port? I don't know. Let's just drop this down here. And that's the boot. Let's give this a refresh here. So there is a way to find out, and we know how to do this from our prior bootcamp. But what I'm going to try to do is just do Docker PS. And this should tell us. So here it's going 8008 to 11434. The direction always confuses me, by the way. But I think 8008 goes to 11434. So I think it's running on 8008. But let's first try this one and see if it fails. And make sure you have curl installed. If you're on a Mac, you have curl installed. On Linux, you might have to install it. We'll go ahead and run this. And this is saying... Well, this actually came from here. This actually didn't do what we wanted, which is totally fine. I wanted to bring in that 1B in here so it doesn't download the big one. So it's saying it can't connect, which is totally fine. So what I'm going to do instead is switch this over to 8008, they said. We'll run this up again. 8008. And by the way, this might still not work because it really depends on the networking mode of Docker. And so it's saying failed to connect, etc., etc. So that's not working. Another way that we can try this is we can go here And we can just right click and attach a shell. That's going to bring us into the actual container. And so this is local host, right? And if it's running on 114343, then we can copy this, and now we won't have a permission denied issue. It says command not found. Let's try wget. But none of these commands exist, so I don't have a means to do this inside the container. So another way that we could do this is that we could attach another container to the network and then connect it to that one. It really comes down to that bridge communication. And I always kind of forget how bridge works. Let's just take a moment here and see if I can find the slides. I'll be back in one moment, okay? I am back and I have my slides. And so what I'm looking for is that bridge mode. I know I must cover it in this thing. Oops. So for those that are interested in my Kubernetes course, remember, it's free on FreeCodeCamp. But I'm going to go look for that bridge networking mode. So they can act as a tunnel to create a bridge networking mode. That's not what I'm interested in yet. A bridge mode. There's modes that I cover in here. I know I cover them. Okay, if I don't cover it in this, then maybe I cover it somewhere else. Just give me a moment to find the slides. I have so many slides and notes, I just never know where things are anymore. So now I'm opening up this stuff here. We'll say bridge mode. Well, here's one that describes it. So this is not exactly what I was looking for. I have like a diagram that really explains it, but bridge isolates between containers, but they can still communicate with each other. But what I'm thinking is that doesn't, oh, here we go. Well, again, this is not exactly the same thing, but container guest port maps to host different port. The guest and host can connect. Host mode. Container guest port directly maps to the same host port. The guest and host port will be the same. You don't need to define a post, etc. So I'm thinking what's happening here is that because it's on bridge mode, in order for us to access the container, we need another container to interact with it. So I'm going to go just test that theory out. We're going to bring this on down here. I'm going to make a new conversation. Again, use whatever you want to have that conversation. But I have a container that is, I have a Docker Compose in bridge mode. When I attempt to run curl on my host machine, I get access denied. Can I only access the API by running another container in the Docker Compose? And that's what my theory is. Again, not an expert at this stuff. Never remember it. No, you can access the API from your host machine, but you need to properly expose the port in your Docker Compose file. Adds a port file. Okay, we have that already. So we'll go back over to here. If that's not the issue, then maybe there's a permissions issue. But we'll go ahead here and I'll just show this. Like, this is what I have. This is what I have. So your configuration looks correct with Ollama with port 8008. If you're getting access denied, check the verified port mappings. Curl if there's an accessibility issue. Examine the container logs. So that's actually a good idea. We should check the container logs. But I'm going to go out of the shell, and we'll go back over to here. It actually says failed to connect. So I'm going to go give it that information. So it's saying maps on port 8008, right? So, okay, that's fine. We'll go ahead and do that. We'll see what the error is there. This is what I like about LLMs or these assistants, is that I don't have to try to keep things straight. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. So it says Llama 3.21 billion. So I guess it was working this entire time. And so at least we cleared up that thing. So it should really be that. But the thing that I want to run is Llama 3.21 billion. That's what I want to run. That's the thing that we have here. If we go up, what did we set it as? I don't have my example here. That's frustrating. Oh, right here. Okay, so we'll copy this. You'll notice my copy and paste doesn't work half the time. It's just Windows. It's not me. And so maybe it's lowercase 1b. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this. And we'll paste it in like this. Now, we told it what model it's supposed to run, so maybe by default it already knows. These are questions we don't know. This is something we go back to our technical uncertainty and be like, we're using Ollama. Do you need to do this? Do you need to do that? Whatever. So we now have model llama 3.12 billion not found. So it's saying the model's not found, even though we specified the model during its startup time. So if we can't generate a request, maybe we can say download a model. Another thing that I'm wondering is, like, you probably want the model to reference something locally, right? As opposed to what's going on here. But I'm going to go ahead back over to here. We'll bring this down. And there are other API endpoints. So we go up to here. We have create a model. I don't want to create a model. I just want to pull a model. Let's go here, pull a model. And so this will pull one. So let's go ahead and try this. So pull a model. And so I want this to be small, so I'm going to do this here. I thought it would do that because when, you know, I normally install Ollama and I run these commands, it usually does it. But maybe the CLI we use in Ollama is running these separately, right? So maybe we still have to run this manually. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. Paste. Also, while we're working through this, we should be really doing our documentation here. So I'm going to go and just say, like, technical uncertainty. So, you know, like, when in bridge mode, does bridge mode mean we can't access, we can only access Ollama API with another model in the Docker Compose? And the answer is no. The host machine will be able to access it. Which port is being mapped? 8008 to, I'm just putting whatever number. So in this case, 8008 is what the port, what is the port the host machine will access. The other port is the guest port. So the port of the service inside the container. Okay, so there's that. Q, you know, if we pass the LLM model ID to the Ollama server, will it download the model when we start up the Ollama server? Will the model download on start, right? It does not appear so. The Ollama CLI might be running multiple APIs, so you need to call the pull API before trying to generate text. Here's something. It's like, Q, will the model be downloaded in the container? And does that mean it will, the model deleted when the container stops running? So these are questions we want to, like, be able to ask, right? So we have that, which is great, but we'll go back up to here. And so we're going to pull this one and hit enter. And so now it's pulling it. Now we don't even have to check the logs because we can see it right here. And so it's attempting to pull it. I'm going to assume that it's going inside of this container because unless this is mounted, normally what you do is you have a mount directory, right? But notice there are no mount directories. So it must be downloading within the container. I'm going to go down here and it's just like the model will download into the container and vanish when the container stops running. You need to mount a local drive, and there is probably more work to be done, right? Because it's not as simple as mounting. There's probably more to it. But we're going to go ahead and grab this one, the generate command. I'm just going to put this top level. I know my my markdown's a little bit messy. So we'll run this. And is it working? It's a little bit messy what it's doing. It is. It's working. It's streaming it each part. Okay. So this does work, right? It's not the prettiest thing ever, but it does work. But I guess this kind of makes sense because like if you're using the CLI, like it's just going to hit the API like this. It's going to come back like this mess. And so if we want it to be more comprehensible, we need an intermediate program or something else. So I'm going to consider this part working, and we're going to say OPA Docker Compose, right? And what I want to do in the next video is like, let's figure out if we can now that we have this running, how do we get something attached to it? And so I think it's like, it's either the LLM one or whatever, that the ones that's running LangChain. And maybe what we can do is then hit that container, and then we'll get something that looks more like a human response, right? Because this you would never just deploy on its own. You wouldn't deploy Ollama, and you could go deploy this on EC2. You'd rather probably use TGI or something else. But the point is that you would want to always front this with something, right? For security reasons, to make it easier to work with. Also, so that if you need to change out the engine or the server, you can. So the server is being separated from the thing that interfaces with the server, okay? So we're going to go ahead, and I'm just going to go ahead and commit these changes. Okay, and sync my changes. And I'll be back here in just a moment for the next part of the video, okay?